You've probably heard this famous phrase from Jesus: give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. It comes from Matthew 22, verse 21. But have you ever wondered what Jesus really meant by that? Is it just about paying taxes, or is there a deeper message that challenges how we live our lives today? You see, the real meaning behind give to Caesar what is Caesar's is more relevant to our lives today than many realize. Matthew 22:21 challenges us to reflect on our priorities and values. Jesus' words still carry weight and wisdom and can transform how we view our responsibilities in this world. In this video, we're going to dive into this verse and see how it applies to our lives today. Let's start by looking at the context in which Jesus said these words. Prior to Matthew 22, verse 21, Jesus told this series of 3 different stories, and it concluded with the parable of the wedding feast. And all these parables were a direct stab at the religious leaders. And to put it lightly, they are not happy. And after Jesus ends these stories, the Pharisees leave and they start planning on how to trap him. And a little bit while later, the Pharisees come back, this time armed with the Herodians. And they have this question to entrap Jesus. And what's so surprising about this is these were 2 competing parties who rarely agreed on anything. But what they did agree on was that Jesus was a threat and he had to go. And in Matthew 22:16, they go to Jesus and they start buttering him up with all these compliments that surely they don't believe. And then they throw him this question: tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? And while it might not seem like it, this was a theological question. They wanted to know how Jesus felt about the Romans who ruled over Israel. And their assumption was that Jesus would give them a yes or no answer. In either way, it would embroil him in controversy. But Jesus refuses. He knows what they're up to, and he calls them out. And he says, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin that is used for paying tax." You see, Jesus chose to answer their question on his own terms. And he's about to do something brilliant here. They hand him this coin, and he says, whose image is on this? And whose inscription? The coin was a denarius, what most people used to pay their taxes, and it was roughly a single day's wage. And the denarius bore the image of the emperor with the inscription of divine Caesar and high priest. And both of these inscriptions were offensive to the Jews because they placed Rome above them. And knowing Jesus is up to something, they respond with a single word: Caesar's. And this is what leads us to Matthew 22, verse 21. Let's take a look at what it means. So after the religious leaders answer Jesus' question, he responds to them, so give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Jesus' answer here aligns with the Old Testament that says people should pay taxes to those who are over them because ultimately everything is God's anyway. But giving this response, Jesus did not side with either party. He didn't side with those who opposed the Roman tax and wanted to overthrow him, nor did he side with the Romans who wanted them to pay taxes. He didn't side with any group. You see, the religious leaders, they wanted him to pick a side so they could trap him, but Jesus refused. And instead, he tells them to give to those to whom it is rightly due. And I love how Dr. Tom Constable sums it up. He says this: Jesus also advocated rendering to God what belonged to God. As the coin bore the emperor's image and so testified to the ownership of it, so every human being bears God's image and so testifies to his ownership of them. God has even more fundamental claim on the people than Caesar did. The Jews should acknowledge Caesar's claim by paying their taxes, but what is more important is that they acknowledge God's claim by obeying him. This was a condemnation of Israel's leaders who were not obeying God as an exhortation to all the people to follow God's will. For them, that involved believing in and following Jesus. The message in this verse is simple and the logic is profound. Give to Caesar what belongs to him and give to God what belongs to him. The word give here literally means to give back. In other words, our taxes are obligatory. We owe them to the government as part of our financial stewardship. And Jesus here is drawing a distinction between these two kingdoms. You have gods and you have Caesars. And while Caesar is the king of this world, Jesus is the king of an eternal world. And followers of Jesus, we exist in both of these kingdoms, at least temporarily. And under Caesar, there are certain obligations that involve material things and money. But under Christ, these obligations involve eternal things. And what Jesus is saying, he's saying, if Caesar wants money, give it to him. His image is stamped on the coin anyway. So give him the temporary things he's due, but don't neglect God. Because while Caesar is over the temporary things of this world, God is over what is eternal. So what does it mean to give God what he's due? Well, Paul tells us in Romans 6:13, where he says, offer yourselves to God as those who have been brought from death to life, and offer every part of yourself as an instrument of righteousness. See, Jesus' answer here is brilliant. It shows his wisdom and authority in the face of the religious leaders' opposition. The religious leaders thought they had this foolproof plan. But with just a few words, Jesus dismantles their question and exposes their motives, and he sends them running away. And I want to end by looking at how we can apply this verse to our lives today. What does it mean for us to render unto Caesar in 2024? You see, today, many followers of Jesus wrestle with this idea of giving to our government, especially when we feel like it's mismanaging our resources or even acting against our values. But here's the reality. Jesus was speaking to people under a Roman rule, a regime known for corruption and brutality, and yet he still commanded them to pay their taxes. Why? Because honoring those in authority is not about endorsing their actions, it's about living with integrity. And God will hold each person accountable. That's his job, but it's not ours. Now, this doesn't mean that we just sit idly by and go along with unjust laws, but we fight differently than the rest of the world. You see, the early church was literally being killed and imprisoned. And what did they do? They fought like Jesus did, with love and kindness, boldly standing on truth, but refusing to stoop to the world's level. And we are to fight with the same unwavering faith. Our call as Christians is to show respect to those in authority, pay our taxes, pray for those who hate us. That's what it means to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And let's not miss the deeper message here. While Caesar's image was stamped on a coin, God's image is stamped on us. And we're called to give our very selves to God, to submit to his kingship, for our lives belong to him. So yes, give to Caesar what is temporary, but give to God what is eternal. Let's not be distracted by the fleeting concerns of this world. Instead, focus your heart on the eternal kingdom God is building. That is where our true allegiance lies. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you were challenged and encouraged to give to God what is God. If you were, would you leave your thoughts down below in a comment? And also don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date on future content that's coming out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.